All right, and it's time for the final discussion video of the floating record chapters. Well, no, not really. We still got a bunch more left, but for right now, because now we get to go back to the main story. So, last floating record for like this section. So, real quick, right, happens in the chapter, we have Nicola and Hilda. They find out something funky is going on in Hydrangea Island. They send over Scarab. Scarab checks what's happening. Shiva gets kidnapped. Yatta goes to follow her. And as soon as she steps into the school building, she gets put in a immediate genjutsu. And she is sent to one of the worst places you could ever imagine. High school. So, while we're following Yatta in like her school days dream sequence, there's like two things happening. So the first one is, we're just following Yatta like day to day as she lives like the school life. Second, in the background, there is Reika, and she has her plan to kind of like merge everyone together, human instrumentality style, using consciousness projection. She wants to kind of unite humanity together mentally so that, there's no more lying and deceit, and, that'll kind of eliminate conflict. See, because, no more disagreements. Everybody knows what everybody's intentions are, and that will allow them to get past their social issues, because, how are you going to deal with building up a colony on a whole nother planet if you can't get along with your neighbor? She's working on the experiment, right? They get the results back. They find out Yatta is like the most suitable test subject. Yuka, in like a mix of care and jealousy, decides to replace Yatta's name with her own, so she takes her place. They go through all the experimental procedures, and at the same time, on the inside, Yatta has like conversations with like her mental image of herself, giving her a bit of that character development that she has been lacking. And every once in a while, we jump out of the dream to see what's happening in the real world, and we see Yatta. She's like exploring the school, trying to figure out what's happening, tracking down Yuka. So Yuka goes through all the experiments up until the time of the outbreak. During that, everything hits the fan. Kohei ends up like soft betraying Reika, knocks her out, drags her off the island. Yuka remains trapped on the island, and Yatta is freed and goes to Babylonia, becomes a construct. The rest is history. We jump back to the present, and Reika appears back on the island. She survived, turned herself into a construct, and she came back to like help Yuka reawaken herself, to save her, to do what she couldn't do all those years ago. Yatta finds Yuka. She puts belt to ass. Reika comes in, and they kind of have like this somber, sweet mother-daughter thing, this like pseudo redemption. And then Yatta goes back to Babylonia, and she becomes the leader of Scarab, which is like the original issue the chapter started with. And then all's well that ends well. So, like I was saying for Yatta, the chapter starts out with her being offered the position as Scarab's captain, and she turns it down. And you find out, like over the course of the chapter, it's because she doesn't feel like worthy of being responsible for people. And that's because of the guilt she has over failing to save Yuka and like the other students, and like her survivor's guilt. So over the chapter, she kind of gets over that. She has those conversations with like inner Yatta, and Dream Yatta kind of tells her, there's no sense getting hung up on the past, right? You did the best you could all those years ago. There's no sense like dwelling on it. I think it's fine, right? Really short and sweet character arc. Then there is Yuka, who I think is actually a bit more interesting than Yatta. So Reika adopted Yuka from this orphanage, and Yuka has this insanely massive sense of, not entitlement, what's the word I'm thinking of? Gratitude. There it is. This sense of gratitude, and she feels like she has to repay Reika for like adopting her. And it's to a really unhealthy degree. Like in the chapter when she changes her name in the report for the test subject, she says it's to keep Yatta from being like physically disabled or hurt or possibly killed to do the experiments. And while that is true, there's also this massive sense of jealousy that she feels towards Yada, because she sees it as competing for Reika's attention. Like, she's like, why is Reika looking at Yata for these experiments? Pay attention to me. I'm here too. I can be useful. I can help you. And that's also like a driving motivator for her. That's why she goes along with all of her plans, including like the murdering of Osaka, whatever his name was. So at the end of the chapter, when Yuka is in the final experiment and the island is overrun by the corrupted and the virus shows up, Yuka is put into this state of suspended animation. And when the virus makes its way to her, she's still like half conscious, right? So she's not just torn apart in the virus and has her consciousness broken down. She's still like partly lucid. But more importantly is that the experiment was consciousness projection, right? Connecting to people, or more specifically having people connect to her, but I'll get into that a bit later. But she was linked with all these people on the island as the virus was tearing through. And like we saw in the chapter, she can feel the emotions and the feelings of those people. So she's overcome by this like feeling of despair and pain and sadness as all these people are dying to the virus. And because Reika's original goal was to like help humanity be a bit more peaceful and happy, she, in her own way, decides to follow that. She decides to use the consciousness projection to put everyone into like a peaceful dream, because she knows she can't save their lives, but the least she can do is make sure they're not suffering. So as time goes on, you see the squads go to the island. She wakes up. So as time goes on, right, Cradle finds her and she gets more active, and she puts the two squads from the beginning of the chapter that Nicola mentioned, she puts them in the dream too. And she eventually wants to put everyone into the dream, right? All of humanity. The problem comes in when people don't want to go into the dream. Sorry, man, you don't have a choice. And that's where the problem lies. Living in an eternal dream of like pleasure and paradise doesn't sound that bad until you realize that to get there, you kind of gotta die. So I'll put you in the happy place, but I'm gonna have to kill everybody first. And if you think going to a paradise pleasure realm is a good thing, boy, do I have some characters for you. But yeah, as time goes on, she's of course connected to the tide, and nothing connected to the tide is ever good. So it slowly twists her desire and the dreams and turns them into like torturous nightmares, leading to like the current events of the chapter. I forgot if I said this or not, but Cradle is the one who pulled her out of the red tide. Well, because like her consciousness was floating around in the punishing virus. Cradle's the one who pulled her out and gave her like a new body. Alright, now the rest of the characters should go kind of quick because they're kind of one-sided. So Reika, right, typical scientist, right, she cares a lot for her research, she doesn't really care about anything else. We find out that she only adopted Yuka to use her to get onto the island. And as time passed, she just started to like Yuka as like her own daughter and started to really care about her outside of these experiments. Now, to me, this sentiment comes in a little bit fast, because in the beginning of the chapter, Reika's like love towards Yuka it's there. Like, it is there, because she does go to like a little cake shop after a presentation, and she gets like a cake for Yuka, just like unprompted. So she cared. It's still there, but she definitely valued the experiments more. But then, like, soon after that, she leaves for this meeting that she has to go to, and she kind of just disappears out of the story. Although, every couple of nodes, she does come back into the story to have a very brief conversation with Kohei to ask about how Yuka is doing. Like, just stuff like, is she recovering? How's the experiment going? So, like I said, you can tell she cares a little bit, because in the beginning of the chapter, she definitely cared a little bit, but for sure not enough to tell her to stop the experiment. And then she disappears for a bit, and then comes back and says, you know what, this isn't worth it, stop the experiment. That we've been working on for years. The experiment that was so valuable to me, I was willing to kill someone for it. Like, it's not like they were having, a lot of mother-daughter time. Reika was gone for like half the chapter. So to me, that's kind of iffy. But I guess that's why at the end of the chapter, she says that I wasn't able to be like the mother that Yuka needed in the beginning. And that's why she has her atonement moment by doing the one-on-one projection. Next character, right, we have Kohei, who's got even less information than Reika. Right, he's just her assistant, but he's also really sketchy. He has like his own set of guards that work for him, presumably, and not for Reika, because they listen to him and not her. Mans has absolutely no love for Yuka. The very best that she gets out of him is, I didn't kill you, and like that's got to be a win in her book. So overall in the chapter, they are always alluding to this idea of Prometheus. And if you don't know the story of Prometheus, very quick version, he gave fire to humanity to help benefit humanity, but in exchange, he was punished. And the big takeaway from that story is that the person who bestows the blessings cannot be a part of them. But that was essentially Yuka's goal, too, to become the Prometheus of Reika's consciousness story. So that's why she is the one who's giving these dreams to all these people, but she herself was never able to dream. She just suffered. Which is another reason why Reika was so adamant about giving Yuka that dream in the end. Because she was like, this girl has suffered enough. Let me give her a little bit of happiness that she couldn't have all these years. Alright, well that's really all I got right now. But, so there is some stuff. If you can't hear this plane, that's the downside of living behind an airport. And we're back. So I cut a couple of things out of the chapter. This chapter is kind of like Cinderburns in the sense that it shows you like the day-to-day activities. So like stuff like, oh, I just got done doing track practice. Let's talk about track practice. Stuff like that. So like that's kind of stuff I cut. So in one of these nodes, there is Yata and Yuka having a conversation about wanting to work in a flower shop. Right, I cut a conversation like that. In node 8, I skipped the entire node because the beginning of it, the story section, it's just Yata finishing up track practice, and then the rest of it is all gameplay. In node 12, there is a scene of Reika and Kohei, and they're talking to each other, and it's just Reika checking in on the experiment. Like, oh, how is Yuka doing? Is she alive? And Kohei is just trying to tell her about the experiment, and she's like, I don't care, tell me about Yuka. The node that has probably the most significance, but like, not enough to make it worth anything, really, is node 15, the beginning section of node 15. There is a conversation of Reika and Kohei where he explains the need to turn Yuka into a construct. And it kind of jumps back and forth between the past and the present in Babylonia, because Nicola is saying like, oh, why do we have records of a unsanctioned construct transformation? And then they go back to show you it's because of Yuka. Also in that node, Cradle shows up, but she shows up for like 2 seconds. Like she literally just drops in and says, I gave Yuka a heart because she had a wonderful story inside of her, and like that's it. Then she leaves. Valeria is also in that node, and she just shows up and shoots at Cradle to make Cradle leave, and then Cradle leaves to go handle whatever she's doing over in Shaper's Ripples. Oh, and Valeria also takes Shiva away. That's how Shiva gets on the outside with Valeria. But honestly, that doesn't matter. You could just assume that Yata threw her out the window or something. There's actually a couple of times in the node, not in the node, but in the chapter where we check back in with Scarab, because, after that second, third node, we don't see them again until the chapter ends. They get checked in on every once in a while, but it's literally like 2 lines where they just say like, oh, the signal has gotten less intense. Yata must be doing something. And then we go back to Yata. Yeah, so that's all of the stuff that I cut. Just figured you don't need a 10-minute conversation on the various school clubs that want Yuka to join them. Oh, there's also one more detail. This never becomes relevant in the chapter, but Asimov explains it, so I might as well say it here. So even though they call it consciousness projection in the chapter, even Asimov acknowledges that that name isn't accurate. What's happening is that everyone outside is connecting to Yuka's mind, and she projects the illusions and hallucinations inside her own mind. And because the people are connected to her, they see the illusions within her own mind. And that's why the process is so physically draining, and why your physicality matters so much, is because her own body has to, do all the calculations to send all of these dreams to however many people are connected to her. Which is why when the amplifier was destroyed, she couldn't maintain the illusions anymore, because her body was just physically not strong enough to process all of that information and send that information to all the people connected to her. And that's also kind of like the beginning stages of mind beacon technology, because that's how the mind beacon works. The constructs latch on to the commandant, which is why the commandant's mentality is so important. So like Shortholt notes that Valeria's mind beacon makes him like on edge, because that's Valeria's mentality. He piggybacks on her. But then when they connect to commandant, it's like a lighthouse that clears the way, because they're piggybacking on commandant's mentality, which is more like clear-headed and eye-opening. As for the stages, I think the stages were actually really cool. I really liked walking through the school. That was really fun. Although I did have to drop my phone settings because I couldn't load the building properly. So it took like a bunch of tries, and I just had to just drop my settings down. Let me tell you, I've been looking for a boss that I liked as much as Cradle. I think Yuka might be that boss. I don't know. I really liked the Yuka boss fight. I liked being able to play as her. That was fun. That was really fun. And then last thing I want to say here is I think the music in the chapter was really good. It's really like haunting. But in my opinion, I think it's so wasted in this chapter. Like it feels like such a creepy song to be put in a chapter about like a depressed schoolgirl. Like if Cradle showed up and did something like crazy, like blew up the clean zone, kind of like chapter 30, that's when I would expect a song like that to show up. But overall, no complaints here. It's been so long since the main story. I'm gonna have to give like a crazy long recap, because man, I've nearly forgotten what was happening. Okay, I'm getting tired of these planes. I don't know how to make outros. Bye.